Hi there, it's Bruce Wallace from Dundee Victoria Chess Club in Bonnie, Scotland, and I'm continuing a series of games that I've taken from Garry Kasparov's book on my Greek predecessors, and this is from the second volume, and it's a game by Max Euwe, the 5th world champion from the Netherlands, the only world champion who was not a professional chess player. Now in this game he's playing Miguel Najdorf, the Argentinian Grandmaster, in the Zurich Candidates Tournament in 1953. Euwe has white, and it's a King's Indian fianchetto variation with some early deviations, and we'll go through the opening fairly rapidly here till we reach c5 from Najdorf, then d5 from Euwe, and then e5 from Najdorf. Euwe continues to play aggressively, h6 challenging the bishop. Euwe exchanges off, queen takes, and now Euwe plays a bold move, d6, which is an aggressive move, and here the aim of Euwe, according to Bronstein, who was commentating on the game, says that this has a twofold strategic purpose. Firstly, to impede the development of black's queenside pieces, particularly the knight on b8 and the bishop on c7, and also to give his square, his pieces the square d5 for the use of bishop and knight, and to initiate an all-out attack on black's kingside while the d6 pawn is still in place. It's a risky venture because should black manage to win the d6 pawn, he will have advantage, so white must play with a lot of energy. First of all, Najdorf develops the knight to c6, and then Euwe plays e3, stopping the knight coming to d4, b6, preparing the development of the bishop. Then Euwe begins to go all out for the attack with bishop d5. Now the e-pawn is immune from capture. If the queen takes the d-pawn, the queen is lost to bishop takes f7 check, winning the queen. So Najdorf puts his king into safety on h8, and then knight e4 attacking the queen. Queen back to d8, then h4, and this shows the continuation of Euwe's strategy, creating an outpost support for the knight on g5. f5 attacking the knight, and now knight g5. Now this knight is immune from capture. If h takes, check. The bishop must interpose, then rook takes, and it's a huge advantage for white. So after knight g5, the knight is immune, and then after knight g5, bishop b7 developing, then g4, opening more lines, e4, knight e2. Now the other knight comes into the attack, and these knights play a heroic part during the struggle. Bishop takes b2, and this pawn has been given up, and white ignores the threat to the a1 rook and plays knight f4. Now some people were saying, couldn't black just take the rook? And Bronstein points out that the square f4 is an ideal outpost for the knight, but white is offering the sacrifice of the exchange, and shouldn't black just take the rook? And he says it's impossible to answer questions like this with variations, because white has just too many tempting continuations of the attack, which in a practical game, in my view, cannot be parried. Najdorf was evidently of the same opinion, and in the first instance he defended the key point g6 with the move queen f6. So Euwe took the pawn on f5. Now black took the rook, winning the exchange, and now knight takes g6 check. And although Schroeder has the game as almost level, white's pieces are looking increasingly menacing. Black now moves out of the check with king g7, and look at the squares that these white knights are hitting in black's position. And if you actually consider the bishop in the attack also, the square g8 is covered. So Black really only has one safe square at the moment for his king, and that is g7. So it must be mind-boggling to attempt to work out defensive variations in such a position. Euwe now takes the e4 pawn with the knight, hitting the queen, and it's bishop c3 check, and Euwe just steps out of the attack. Queen takes pawn on f5, and now knight f4, and this threatens bringing the rook to g1 with check, and really Black's position is onerous. Najdorf moves the king to h8. Now the knight takes the bishop on c3, and you will note that the knight has moved from b1 to c3 to e4 to g5, coming back to capture the knight on e4, and then the bishop on c3, and still, in fact, the tour of the knight is not completed. Rook a to e8, and Shredder here recommends rook g8, but still with advantage to white. However, after knight takes c3, Black played rook a to e8, and then the knight continues its grand tour. Finally, Black offers the exchange back, but Euwe merely plays h5, creating another outpost, this time for the f4 knight on g6, threatening to come in with another check. Najdorf plays rook g5, and now knight g3. Now here, Shredder recommends the calm defensive move, queen f6, still with advantage to white. However, Najdorf has had enough of these knights, and it gives back the exchange. The pawn takes back, and now rook takes e3, king f2 attacking the rook, rook back to e8, now rook e1, the rook is exchanged, queen takes e1, and now the queen is threatening to come to e8 with check, and the attack will be decisive. And note that the bishop on b7 and the knight on c6 have played absolutely no part in the game whatsoever. It's as if Black is only playing with his queen against the attack of the queen and two of white's minor pieces. Black puts the king on g7, then queen e8, which is now decisive. Black tries some checks, queen c2 check, king g1, queen d1 check, king h2, queen c2 check, and now the knight can also defend, coming back to g2, and Black is defenseless. Queen f5, and the game is now over. Queen g8 check, king f6, queen h8 check, king g5, queen g7, and Black resigns. If, for example, king takes h5, it's bishop f7, and it's mate in one after Black's next move. If we go back, if queen g6, it's mate in one with queen g6 takes g6 mate. So after queen g7, Black resigns. Quickly now, in overview of the game, it's King's Indian fianchetto variation, in which white plays very aggressively in the opening, and after the move d6, the strategic aim of splitting the board in half. Black's queenside pieces don't get into the game until white's attack is so developed, particularly the use of these knights, and white ignores the threats and the loss of a rook, and the knights come in decisively. Finally, mating the black king after Black's pieces have been exchanged off on the king side, and the knight playing a role in defence, and finally Black resigning because of the onslaught on the king side. So sparkling game by Euwe there, the 5th world champion, and another excellent game from Garry Kasparov's series on My Great Predecessors. There's some brilliant games in these books, not just by the world champions, but also by some of the challengers. And the next video I'm going to make is a brilliant game from David Bronstein, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon on YouTube.